Hello and welcome to the Havin'A Yak podcast. It is March 11th?
It is March 11th.
Yeah, March 11th. We're back for our second Havin'A Yak podcast. This is the bi-weekly podcast that will come in between our normal post-to-post hockey podcast. And today we are going to answer more life questions from you guys at home. But first I'll address for our viewers, you will see a larger screen behind us. I actually got this for free. It doesn't have an HDMI input on it. It only has an SD card slot and a USB slot, so I can't actually use it as a monitor or a TV. I can just plug something in and it'll autoplay slides. So There's only one photo on there. It's Havin'A Yak logo, but I can't stop it from cycling because of the onboard software on the TV. So it might be a little distracting to you, but there's nothing I can do about it, unfortunately. But
right.
Are you prepared for all these questions today? Because there's some serious ones in here. There's some serious life questions in here.
Is that right?
Like people want advice.
Oh my God! Well, I'm not a professional of any kind. I'm not a doctor. I'm not a lawyer. I'm not a psychiatrist.
Yeah.
So any advice I give is completely from someone who knows nothing.
There's so many other things, though.
Oh man!
You have so much life experience. Okay, because the first one's a big one. And before I get into it, I'll just say that there was a very positive response to our last Havin'A Yak podcast. People really liked it. Yeah.
Good.
So
good.
that's good to know. So thank you everyone who listened to the whole thing last time. We really appreciate that.
All right.
And we're glad that you're back for the second one, if you are. So, okay, for the first question.
Okay.
This is pretty deep, actually. Do you think age difference matters in a relationship?
Well, I think it matters, but it shouldn't be a deal breaker.
Okay.
Age difference matters because it's something that has to be navigated.
Right.
But as long as that navigation takes place, then it's all right. I've got one of the students in my flying class that I teach, ground school. Mm-hmm. He was telling me last week that he's 20 years older than his wife.
Really?
He was 45 and she was 25 when they got married. And he's, that's a long time ago now, and they're still going strong. And it worked out great.
How old is he now?
I say he's in his mid-60s.
Oh, really?
And she'd be in her mid-40s. And probably now is the time when that age difference would maybe show more. Mm-hmm. But I don't see age it's chronological because you have a birth certificate and you have math and you can figure out exactly how old you are. Mm-hmm. But it's also mental.
Totally.
There are people I know who are 20, but they're old souls.
Absolutely.
And there are people I know that are 50 that are big kids. So age is what, right?
Yeah, it's more about the personality and the level of maturity than anything.
Exactly. So I would never say age is a deal breaker, but it is an elephant in the room. Mm-hmm. So it has to be addressed. There have to be boundaries about what degree the age will become a conversation piece in the relationship and that kind of thing.
What do you think is an acceptable age difference?
Well,
say you were 40.
Mm-hmm.
How much older would you date a woman if you were 40? Hypothetically, if you were single.
If I were 40,
yeah,
I'd go into the 50s. Probably.
Really?
Sure. Sure. Because 50 is the new 40. And really, I've seen, even now, I'm older I'm in my late 50s now, mm-hmm. but there are, not that it's only appearances, but there are people I know who are in their maybe early 50s who are very young looking, they're very young acting, they're very active, mm-hmm. They're very youthful in every way, and I think they would be very attractive to someone who's 40.
Interesting.
So I'd have no problem with that, because if you're 40, depending if you're trying to start a family, if that's part of your plan, well, that might interfere with that.
That's true.
But if it's just about the other person and living the rest of your life together, women outlive men, mm-hmm. Usually.
It's because men are stupid.
Well, not only that, there's biology too. Women are typically more mature than men at the same age.
Yeah.
Typically. I'm not saying all the time.
Yeah.
So a man who marries an older woman, and actually I did that. Your mother was older than me.
That's true.
Not by decades, but back then when I was 21, she was 23, and the age difference was probably more that wasn't maybe obvious to the viewer, but it was culturally obvious to us.
Mm-hmm.
We weren't in the same class in school. She was a couple of years ahead of me. She was in university when we first started to date, and I was still in high school. And that was different.
That's scandalous. Scandalous.
Yeah, but I'm not sure if it works the same in the other direction. And I don't know that that's necessarily fair, but as much as we are making great strides in treating men and women the same when it comes to the law and job opportunities and pay and all those things where it's important, very important, to treat everybody the same, we can't ignore the fact that we're not the same. Mm-hmm. Men and women are different. And women are different in a way that usually makes them better than men.
Yeah.
They're saner, they're not as risky taking as men are, they're more stable, and they have much more responsibility, I think, sense of responsibility than men do. Mm-hmm. So in many of the ways where women are different, it's not because they're worse, they're way better.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I would have actually thought you would have had the opposite opinion, basically because you're kind of old school, and I'm not saying all your views are old school, that old school mentality.
Some
but
definitely are.
Some are.
Yeah, some are. Now, if you said, is it okay for a 50-year-old man to date a 20-year-old woman? And I'd almost say girl, but
yeah,
I don't use girl in a negative sense, just like I'm going out with the boys.
Yeah.
The boys could all be 60. So girls and boys is not an age-related thing. But I don't know. Sitting from my age right now, where I am, I would find it difficult to relate to anyone who was maybe younger than 45, just culturally.
Definitely.
I'm not saying I couldn't, find a way to connect with someone who was younger than 45. The harder part would be getting someone who's under 45 to want to connect with me.
That whole situation makes me very cringy at the moment. Like I feel very uncomfortable if I saw someone in their 50s with someone in their 20s. I think that would creep me out. But
I don't know if it would creep me out. I certainly want to ask questions in my own mind. I wouldn't stop them on the street and say, "What's going on here?"
No, I'm to each their own. I'm not hardcore judging them or anything. It's just I would not feel comfortable doing that.
And a lot of it too is, I think the difference is the things that men find attractive in a female are, let's say, a certain list and a certain hierarchy. Pardon me. The things that women find attractive in a male, and maybe this changes as women change their age, as time passes, but women identify many different types of things that they find attractive than a man would identify. And women are far less visual, far more quality-oriented. They want intelligent sense of humor. They want a provider, someone who's able to bring the bacon home and that kind of thing, too.
Bacon.
I had bacon this morning. It was really good. Men are more visual, more physical, I think, at first. There's an interesting saying, and I don't know if I've said it before, maybe even on this air, but men marry women hoping they'll never change, and women marry men hoping they will change.
Yeah, probably.
Yeah.
Good advice, I think.
So I don't know if that really answers the question. But
yeah, no, people want love advice from you.
Man, that's crazy. Like, why? Why would they?
Even married for 30-some years, you got the secrets.
Well, that might be, I don't know if it's love advice, it'd be marathon advice. But
Okay, I've got the next question here for you. It's not love-related. It's sports-related, actually.
Oh, all right.
Favorite sports moment of all time?
Oh, my goodness. I'm struggling.
For me, it's probably 2010, the golden goal.
That would be up there for me.
It's just so magical. It's so perfect that...
Yeah, that would be up there for me. Famous sports moment of all time.
NASCAR stuff?
Well, there's a candidate there, and Richard Petty's last win
I was going to
in
ask
1984.
Had to do with Richard Petty.
Yeah, it was July the 4th, 1984, in Daytona.
Of course.
And Ronald Reagan was president, and he threw the green flag to start the race,
really?
the ceremonial green flag. And Richard is and was a good Republican, so he and Mr. Reagan would probably have been acquainted. And it was a perfect way to go out. It was his 200th win.
Oh, yeah.
And it was on the track that I think he, as much as anybody, made famous.
Oh, absolutely.
And he
Well, he used to race in Daytona before there was even a track there.
Oh, yeah.
When they used to race on the beach.
Exactly, yeah.
So that's his jam.
And his dad, I think Lee Petty, was the first ever winner of the Daytona 500. If I'm not mistaken.
Quite a generation of racers there. It's a shame that Adam Petty passed away.
Terrible, just terrible. It was I like, as you know, I like connections. I like linkages between generations on hockey teams and other ways too. And Lee Petty was an exemplary racer. Richard Petty was the best ever. Kyle Petty had some success.
Had his moments, yeah.
And Kyle Petty raced when things were a lot more competitive and there was a lot less ability for someone to run away with things. A lot more tech, a lot less.
Yeah, lots of parity.
Finesse in the garage area.
Exactly.
And then Adam, he was killed and was just a practice. It was in New Hampshire.
Yeah, he was all by himself on a track.
Yeah. Something broke and he hit the wall. And I think Kyle was there at the time. Terrible thing. And it's the end of a dynasty. Because I think Adam would have been a really good racer too.
Yeah, well, he had lots of potential. Yeah,
certainly. So I guess that would be my favorite sports moment because of all of the planets lining up at the same time. It was still Reagan's first term at that point as president. I'm a kind of a Ronald Reagan fan myself. And to have it in Daytona, July the 4th, the nation's birthday, everything was just great. The stars lined up, so good for that. But there's many others. The Golden Goal would certainly be one. I don't know. There's so many.
There's a lot.
Oh, yeah.
There's a lot.
Sports is great for that.
Next question. What moment of your life did you feel most proud? Choose your answer very carefully.
Most proud? Pride is a sin, you know. You're not supposed to be proud.
You're not. You're supposed to be humble.
You're supposed to be humble. Now, there's proud of something I've just done, or there's proud of something that I've helped do. So I don't know.
I don't know.
Would I be, I think it would be fair to say that I would be very proud when you graduated high school, for instance, or very proud when you and the team you were on would have won a tournament or won a championship in a given year. That's probably dad pride right there. There'd be a lot of that. I've done some things where I've been fairly proud of my work.
What's the time to time. What's the best thing you've done, or what's the piece of work or something you've done in your life that you've been most proud of yourself about?
Oh man, employment-wise, or just doing things wise?
Well, I don't really know.
I honestly think when I soloed the airplane.
Oh.
I don't know if I've ever felt better about my own life and my own ability as the day I soloed the airplane.
It's not like jumping in a car and going for a drive. There's so many things leading up to that point of soloing a plane. It's like hundreds of hours of study and work and learning. And
and a lot of hours of flying. Yeah. And suddenly the instructor gets out and says, "You're on your own." And you apply power and you take off the runway, and as you're lifting up, you immediately realize that the plane is climbing faster than usual because there's only one person in it instead of two. And then you look beside you and the seat's empty, and it hits you. Like, all of my life is now in my own hands, and I can really screw this up.
It's not hard to screw up.
It's not hard to screw up. Now, it was a nice day, but there was a thunderstorm. It was legally far away. It's like 20 miles away or 25 miles, which is fine. But by the time I landed again, which was successful, my first solo was very successful. By the time we had the little ramp ceremony and pushed the plane toward the hangar, it was raining.
Yeah.
So I didn't have a lot, it was coming pretty fast.
And then you got to the point where you felt confident enough to take other people with you, including myself.
Yeah.
And you're responsible for other people's lives, not just your own. So.
Yeah, that's right. And it's a big deal. It's a big deal. So, and it had nothing to do with my employment. It actually cost me way more money than I made to do that. But to get back out, I just remember getting back out and sitting in the car and saying, I just soloed an airplane. Like, that's...
You were going to swear it right there, weren't you?
No.
Oh. All right. Okay, this might be related, actually. What is the most badass thing you've ever done?
I don't know. Certainly nothing aviation-wise. Like, badass to me means risky.
Well, you landed a plane on the highway. But that wasn't intentional.
Yeah, but I didn't do it. I was just in it. I was just one of the poopers.
You went parachuting once.
I did.
That's pretty badass.
That's right. That's pretty badass.
Yeah.
Yeah. I jumped out of a plane at 3,500 feet
Yeah.
with no person strapped to me. So that was kind of a solo too, because we had a bit of a ground school where the instructor tells you how to steer your chute, because we had rectangular fillable chutes, and you have to fly a crosswind leg and a downwind leg and a base leg and then turn final into the wind and all of that. And after probably 6 or 8 hours of ground training, up you go.
Did you have a reserve chute?
Yes.
Interesting. Yeah. Is that law? Anyone who jumps out of a plane?
I think so. I think you need to have a reserve chute.
Even in the military?
I believe so. There's usually one in the front. The reserve chutes are typically packed in the front. And so they're a little awkward when they deploy. But yeah.
Better than dying, so.
Yeah, there's part of the training was the cutaway and then the pull of the reserve. So cutaway is like to basically release yourself from the chute that's tangled.
Which is a critical step.
Absolutely, because if you pull the reserve chute and it goes up and tangles with your other chute, it doesn't end well after that. Yeah.
And depending on what your elevation is or your altitude, I guess, sometimes it has to happen pretty quick. Those steps have to be pretty back to back.
And they do. And all of the training was when you jump out of the plane, you look up and you count to a certain number, 6 or whatever it was, and you make sure you have a good canopy. And if you don't have a good canopy at that moment, you cut away.
Yeah.
And I looked up and I had a good canopy. So the rest was easy.
All right. What is the craziest thing you've ever witnessed in person?
Man, this is nuts, these questions.
Yeah.
God.
I should have gave you some hints so you could think about it beforehand. But
craziest? Like people doing crazy things or just...
Yeah, like someone hitting someone over the head with a beer bottle, or someone like a high-speed chase, or anything like that. Anything like, because you were a firefighter for a while, anything...
Yeah.
I'm sure you saw some crazy things there.
Did see some crazy things there. Most of the crazy things we saw were during training, things we caused ourselves. Mm-hmm. You know, lighting something on fire just so you can put it out. Or seeing how deep of a hole you can drill with a 2.5-inch hose, poured it into a small brass fitting. Yeah. That almost turns the water pressure into a drill. You can't hold it. But those are just physics, interesting things. Crazy? I don't know.
You ever see any like accidents or like plane stuff?
I have.
Like anything at an air show?
I didn't see anything that ended poorly at an air show. I've seen some very cool things at an air show. I don't know if I call them crazy, but the first flight that I'd ever seen of an Airbus A380 back in 2009, I thought that was, at that point, one of the wildest things I'd seen ever. Because that plane took off at Oshkosh, and it looked like it was crawling because it's so big.
The perspective is strange.
Oh, yeah. Even though it's flying at 130 knots or whatever it is, it looks like it's just hanging in the air. My brain was fighting my eyes. This can't be real. Yeah. But most of my cool things in my memory are from aviation, for sure. But I remember being a kid with my dad on Metropolitan Boulevard in Montreal in a freezing rainstorm. And we were just driving along the highway towards downtown Montreal. And this car beside us lost control. And he did a complete 360 and regained control and kept on driving.
That's awesome.
That was the weirdest thing I'd seen up to that point.
Wow. Yeah. I think the craziest thing that I've seen was when I was a kid, there used to be we used to call it a machinery shed behind our next door neighbor's house, who was a farm. So there's lots of tractors and stuff in there. It wasn't a shed. It was a giant, almost warehouse type building. And it had wooden rafters at the top. And we were stupid kids. We climbed everywhere.
Don't tell me that. And
it was, I don't know if you've ever been in it. It's high. It's like...
Yeah, I don't know if I was ever in it. I'm sure I was in it, but...
It's like 30 feet in the air. The rafters are 30 foot. Like, it's high. And I remember Luke was up there, and he fell from the top and landed on the cement. He fell like 40 feet and landed on cement. And, like, that was the craziest thing I've ever seen. And he got up, and he was totally fine. It was unbelievable. Yeah, it's crazy.
I was hit by a car once.
Really?
I was hit by a car and I went flying.
When?
About 1974. Back in Montreal, I was a kid. a bunch of us had decided to go out on a Friday night and go for a journey.
A journey.
I was staying at my cousin Glenn's house that night
Mm-hmm.
because my parents were away. And we just decided to go out and hang out with some friends. And we walked over to Dorval. So from Lachine to Dorval is probably a couple of miles.
Mm-hmm.
And we were in the Dorval trying to cross as pedestrians, the Dorval traffic circle. And a traffic circle is probably familiar to most listeners, but there are little exit ramps and entry ramps, and cars are in the circle. And I had crossed a few of those ramps already. There was one more ramp to go, and all the cars were sweeping around the circle and not taking the ramp. So everyone ahead of me crossed, and I crossed, but at the last minute, one of those cars decided to take the ramp without a signal light or anything and hit me. Luckily for me, he honked his horn just before he hit me, and I jumped. I actually physically jumped in the air. So when he hit me, he caught me in the legs. Like, he didn't slam me forward down into the pavement and run over me. He hit me in the legs, and I tumbled back onto the hood. I rolled up off his windshield and over onto the side.
Dang.
Not a mark on me. I was a little sore, but there was no bruises or cuts.
Well, it's not like cars these days. Cars back then were made out of...
They're pretty substantial.
The weight of cars back then was unbelievable.
Yeah, and there was no mark on the car either.
Wow.
Of course, I wasn't my size now. I was probably...
A few less cheeseburgers.
Yeah, probably 130 pounds soaking wet. You know, I'd be 14 or 15 years old, just a kid.
Yeah.
But the poor guy, he had just rented this car. He had just flown in from Jamaica, and it was a rental car. He'd never driven in Montreal before. You can imagine.
Yeah, man.
And he was... His eyes were the size of dinner plates when he got out of that car. He thought he'd killed me.
Right.
And I said, "No, buddy, I'm good," or whatever I called him. You know, "No, sir, I'm fine." And he was like, "Are you sure?" And he was probably breathing a sigh of relief because, you know, he'd been in Canada like 27 minutes and he'd already killed somebody. But I walked away, and I never told my parents about that. Never told.
I've never heard that story.
Yeah, I don't talk about it much.
Interesting.
Yeah, I never told them because I thought if I did, they would never let me go out and wander again. And it ended well. I'm not going to do that again, and so I didn't. But yeah, that was my closest call on the ground.
Interesting.
Yeah.
What is the furthest distance you have ever driven in a day?
I would say about 1,000 miles. Drove from Binghamton, New York to Milwaukee, just north of Milwaukee, Wisconsin, in one day.
How many times did you stop?
Maybe 3 times, and only for fuel and quick bathroom.
It wouldn't have been when we went to Florida when I was like 6?
I don't think that would have been the longest. Because when you were 6, it was a long day that first day. We left our little town in New Brunswick and drove all the way to Wilkes-Barre,
right? Yeah,
Scranton, Pennsylvania, Harrisburg area. And that was a long haul, very long haul, probably 10 hours maybe.
I remember leaving and it was dark.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it was dark. It was about 4:30 or 5 in the morning.
That's about the only thing I remember of that entire trip, is that it was dark.
It was interesting because we had a fairly recent snowfall, and it doesn't often snow that late in April. This was when it was late April, and the snow had fallen. There was just patchy snow left. But that evening, the sun was still up. We were driving into the sunset. We had just hit really the top end of I-81, at least the Pennsylvania portion of it, and found the hotel that I had called ahead and reserved to. Mm-hmm. It was over 70 degrees Fahrenheit. So we left that morning with snow around us. Yeah. And we went to bed that night in 70 degrees and the sun shining.
Wow.
And the grass was already green. It was fantastic. Cool. It was really cool. But the other trip was in 2009. Drove all the way from Binghamton, almost all the way to past Milwaukee, and we stayed north of town that night. And that was 1,400 kilometers, I think. I think I worked it out.
Wow.
It's a long haul.
The longest I've driven in a day was probably this past summer. I drove from Fredericton, New Brunswick, to Toronto in I don't know how long it was. It was like 14 hours or 15 hours, something like that. I stopped once. I drove from Fredericton to Cornwall. It was over 9 hours without stopping.
That's crazy.
And that's probably the longest I've personally driven. The longest I've been in a car for is probably when Jason and I went to Niagara Falls in 2014. And we drove from Niagara Falls around past Toronto, and then back to Fredericton. So that's, I think it was like, I feel like it was like 18 hours or something like that.
Yeah, it'd be at least 16 without much stop.
We stopped, I think twice. I think we stopped twice. Maybe one. No, we stopped twice. Yeah, so that was a long day.
Mm-hmm.
We left at like 6 a.m. Sunday morning, and I think we got home like 2 a.m. in the morning, like Sunday night or whatever. Yeah, it was nuts. And I was even considering, because I had to come back to PEI, I was considering getting in my vehicle and driving to PEI after that. I was like, nah.
No, good thing you didn't do that. Wow.
All right, where was I here? If you could only have one meal for the rest of your life, what would it be?
So one meal to do me for the rest of my life, or
Yeah.
just I could repeatedly eat that same meal for the rest of my life?
Yeah, you had to
Eat the same thing
You had
forever.
to eat the same thing forever, and there's no health consequences. So, whatever you want. Would it be fast food? Would it be like a Thanksgiving turkey dinner? Would it be barbecue?
Wow. I would probably regret this, but I guess I'll never have the opportunity to find out. But it would be fish and chips from Deluxe French Fries.
Oh, yeah.
I love fish and chips from Deluxe French Fries, and I could easily eat it 3 times a day.
Really?
I think I could, yeah.
It's good. I don't know if I like it that much, but it's good.
Man, it's the best ever.
When are you going back to Moncton or that area?
I'm going back through Moncton and Fredericton on the, I think it's about the 17th or 16th of May. I don't know. I am going to Nova Scotia at the end of next end of April, but I'm only going as far as Spring Hill, so I don't go into the Deluxe French Fries Orbit area.
Orbit. So in May you're going to the States, right?
Yeah, going to Ohio.
And you're going to be checking the P.O. box then down there?
I am.
Interesting.
I am.
Okay. What is the grossest thing you've ever eaten?
Lizard.
Lizard?
I've eaten lizard.
Like you just found it on the ground and just...
Not quite. We were on a trip in Mexico back in 1978. We stopped in a town called Cuernavaca. Cuernavaca later became kind of, well, I won't say famous, but it was the setting or the scene. Maybe, I guess it was the set, the on-location set for the movie Zorro the Gay Blade, starring, I think it was George Hamilton. Anyway, Cuernavaca, Mexico has all these quaint little sidewalk cafes, and us greenhorn Canadians didn't know much about the local menu, and we certainly couldn't read Espanol, so we had some help from the tour guide, and with that, we ordered chicken sandwiches. And it was a nice white bread, bit of mayonnaise, chicken, a little bit of pepper on it probably. It was quite good, very moist, a little yellowy, but tasted fine, tasted like chicken. And I didn't really put much mind to it until we get back in the bus, and we're on our way for the next part of our journey to the coastline. And our tour guide, Enrique was his name, he got on the microphone at the front of the bus. How many people ordered the chicken sandwich? And many of us put our hand up.
Yeah?
And he said, it was not chicken, it was iguana. And a few people reacted poorly to that news. I didn't. I was just like, it's too late now. I've already eaten it, and it was okay.
Mm-hmm.
It's not like it's going to crawl up out of my esophagus. So I was probably weirded out a bit, but I didn't go for, I didn't open the window and yak.
Have a yak.
Didn't have a yak out the bus window. That's probably the grossest thing I've eaten without knowing what I was eating. And I'm a very, very picky eater.
This is coming from a man who eats blood pudding.
Yeah, well, and I was going to touch on that because in my own mind, that was the grossest thing I ate. But if I ever ate blood pudding and someone watched me eat it, they would think that's the grossest thing I ever ate, right?
Absolutely.
You probably would.
Yeah. All right. What is the greatest invention of all time?
Wow. I'm going to say radio.
That's pretty pivotal.
Yeah.
In mankind, actually.
And radio being the broad definition of radio. Radio is Wi-Fi.
Mm-hmm.
Radio is digital satellite transmission. Radio is the ability to talk over great distances. Radio is your cell phone.
Change the world.
Yeah, radio is the backbone of almost everything we find dear. And without radio, without the ability to communicate without wires from place to place, we would be a vastly different society.
What about the wheel?
As old as I am, I don't remember when the wheel was invented, actually.
Do you think that's an invention, though? Or like a necessity?
Well, I don't know what you mean.
Well, I think anybody
something can be both.
Well, anybody can invent the wheel. You just find a round rock and then, there's a wheel.
Yeah, but I think it probably started with people trying to move big stones to build the pyramids, and they would roll them on logs or something, and the logs would roll, and then they take the one that squirted out the back and carry it to the front. And
I don't really consider that an invention, though.
Well, no, it's a repurposing, I guess. I don't know how there's no patent on the wheel. You can't look it up in the office.
Yeah, that's true.
Fred Flintstone invented the wheel.
Yeah, what a man.
Yeah. So certainly I chose radio, but there are many candidates.
No, I like your choice, actually.
Okay.
I'm not into radio as much as you, but I like it. How do you feel about children on leashes?
I'm tempted to say I love it.
Well, you're allowed to say that.
Okay, I love it. I love the idea.
This is a very candid podcast.
Yeah. There was and I'll just give you an example. Yesterday at the PEI Flying Association booth at the local recreation show, we had one visitor who was flying the aircraft simulator. And while he was flying the aircraft simulator, this child came along who was actually probably old enough to know better, probably 10 or 11, and walked right up and started tapping away in the keyboard of the computer that was behind the simulator. Oh, look! And he just started banging on the keys, knowing that it was bad. And his parents were like, oh, Jeremy, or whatever his name was, stop that. Come on back now. And he was just banging away in the keyboard. And at that moment, I would have grabbed the leash on him. And he probably, some clothing would be left behind because he would have been ejected from that spot so quickly.
Like a parachute.
Yeah. I think there's, I won't go too far with.
I can feel your anger. Yeah.
I felt very poor. I felt very badly for the person who was trying to fly the plane. And here we are trying to show someone the magic of aviation.
Yeah.
This is a lot what it looks like when you're in the cockpit of an airplane. Isn't this cool? And all of a sudden some kid comes up and just starts ruining the whole thing, just crapping on it.
But
because
you don't blame the kid.
No, I don't.
You blame the parents.
Absolutely. As far as I know, the kid is a little hyper and can't control himself.
It's a kid.
Probably should know better at that age, and certainly you would never have done such a thing. But, maybe we got lucky.
I was a good kid.
Yeah, you were a pretty good kid. You were a very good kid, not just pretty good. You were a very good kid. Almost too good.
Almost suspiciously good.
Yeah, until now I know you're parachuting out of rafters next door. I didn't know about that.
Yeah. Well, I got lots of stories I could tell you. If you could have dinner with 3 people, living or dead, who would they be?
Good grief. 3 people, living or dead.
Mm-hmm.
I think one of them might be Winston Churchill.
Really? He's pretty crotchety.
Yeah, that's fine. That's fine. A tremendous leadership ability. The perfect guy at the perfect time. He was able to gather fantastic people around him to get things done. He had a long career, mostly of failures in politics and the military. Tremendous man. I think I'd like to have dinner with him.
Do you know the portrait of him where he looks really, really angry?
Mm-hmm.
Do you know how that was taken?
I don't.
It's a photographer's story, actually.
Oh, very good.
Let me
Fill me
give
in.
you your fact of the day. So they had a photographer there to take the portrait of Winston Churchill for whatever, and he was smoking a cigar. And the photographer said, I'm going to need you to put that cigar away. And Winston Churchill's like, no way, buddy. I'm not removing the cigar. You don't tell me what to do. I'm Winston Churchill. And he says, sir, I really need you to remove that. I can't be in the picture. And Winston Churchill said, okay, you're done. You're done. Find another photographer, he said to his assistant or whatever. And the photographer walked up to Winston Churchill, took the cigar out of his mouth, threw it in the corner, went back, and took the picture.
That's awesome.
Yeah, it's pretty cool, actually.
Churchill was a very interesting guy. I know I've got 2 more people to put on my dinner list here, but one more Churchill anecdote. This cigar was a famous prop that he used. And now I read this. I wasn't around at the time. I was alive when he was alive, but only for 5 or 6 years. He died in 1965. He would take a thin wire and put it down the length of his cigar before he lit it. And the wire wouldn't come all the way out the end that your mouth is on, but it would be inside. And that little wire, apparently, was just enough to hold the ash from falling off. So the ash would burn but stay there. And he'd wave the cigar around when he was talking, knowing that he was hypnotizing people because they were waiting for this ash to go flying off the cigar, and it never would because he had this wire. Only he knew it. He had this wire, and he'd point the cigar, and he'd use it to emphasize things, and people are just following the cigar, just like a cat would follow a laser pointer. You know? And that was just one of his props. But there's so many stories about him.
It's interesting.
He at a dinner party, this woman who didn't like him come up to him and said, "Mr. Churchill, if I was your wife, I'd poison your breakfast." And he said, "Ma'am, if I was your husband, I'd eat it."
That's awesome.
Yeah. And one more.
Hit me with it.
"Mr. Churchill, you're drunk." "I am, ma'am, and you're ugly. And in the morning, I'll be sober." Now, I don't know if either one of those is true, but it's a great story.
Wow.
Now, I still have 2 people to go.
You do have 2 people to go.
There's so many interesting people that have
Like
walked this
any
earth.
old scientists like Galileo or Copernicus or
No,
Einstein?
I think because of my interest in family research and history, I think I would want to sit down with one of my ancestors. I don't know exactly which one because we have several interesting ancestors, but maybe Peter Marcellus from New York, or maybe Michael Vreeland from New Jersey, people that helped actually found the Dutch colony that became New York eventually, and part of New Jersey as well. But I think I'd like to go back and pull them into the present and just ask them some questions about what was life was like back then.
Right.
And after that, I don't know. I guess there's all kinds of interesting candidates for that.
Richard Petty?
Well, I've already spoken with Richard
That's
Petty.
true.
I haven't had dinner with him, but I have met the man, spoken to him.
Had a laugh?
Had a laugh. Had a yak.
Had a yak, yeah.
He told me how to fix a camera.
Yeah.
Just take it there and beat on it and bring it on back.
Yeah. Anyway, I like you. You don't have to name a third person if you can't think of any. But
It would just be a gratuitous third person. I would. Okay, I'll pick Jesus.
Jesus. Okay.
Yeah.
Sounds good.
Mm-hmm.
What is the worst thing you did as a kid?
The worst thing I did as a kid was when I grew up in a very I would say, I won't say very low income, but in a low income neighborhood. The first 11 years of my life, we had 4 of us, my mother, my father, my brother, and me, in a 1-bedroom apartment. And my brother and I had the bedroom. We each had those mates' beds on either side of the bedroom. My mother and father actually put their bed in what was supposed to be the dining room.
Mm-hmm.
And there was a curtain between the dining room and the living room, and that was their bedroom door, basically. It probably explains why there's only my brother and me. But anyway, I remember when Dad finally did well enough. He got a promotion, and then he got a new job with another company, and he started doing better, and we could afford a house. And when we bought the house, we moved there in April of 1971. And I remember a couple of weeks after that, we came back to my old neighborhood, and I remember saying out loud how run down it looked. You know, I'm only 11. Well, I'm just a kid. I don't have any brain about this. But I always felt so bad about how quickly I turned my back on my life that I had up to that point. All of a sudden, because I'm living in a house, I thought, for a brief period of time, I thought it was better than the people that I'd left behind. And I obviously wasn't, but I thought I was because I was 11. I thought I'd done something. I didn't do anything. I just happened to have lucky enough to have a dad who did something, right?
Yeah.
So I still feel bad about that. Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So
That's part of my apology tour. I would go on, I guess.
Oh, yeah, you mentioned that last time. Yeah, it's always important to appreciate where you've come from.
Mm-hmm. I really, really appreciate it now, more so than ever. I learned so much in those first 11 years, except how to be a good person, apparently.
Who's your favorite artist? And I'm assuming this is musical. They didn't specify. Because I know you don't have any favorite visual artist, like a painter or anything like that. So.
No, I think my favorite artist of visual arts, though, would be Ken Burns. He makes movies for PBS, documentaries mostly, Civil War, things like that.
I know his name.
Ken Burns is amazing.
There's a thing called the Ken Burns effect.
Oh, tell me about that.
It's technical. I don't remember the whole thing of it, so I can't really explain it. But if you want to know what it is, just go Google it, Ken Burns effect.
I'm going to
find it. It's about editing and stuff.
Excuse me. Now, as far as music, I'm not sure.
Led Zeppelin?
Yeah. But that's a group, not an artist.
Well, same thing.
Well, I'm thinking of an individual.
An individual?
An individual musical genius.
Alanis Morissette?
I don't believe so. Ah, man. I'm a big, big fan of Neil Young. I'm a big fan of James Taylor. I'm a big fan of Gordon Lightfoot. I'm a big fan of, there's all kinds of male and female artists out there. Some of them do write their own songs. It would have to be somebody who wrote their own music.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it wouldn't be someone who just was a good singer.
What about Johnny Cash?
He'd be way up there. Even his last album when he's on Death's Door.
I think that was his best one.
Powerful stuff. Amazing.
What about Bob Dylan?
Bob Dylan was a great poet. Kind of didn't do well on the singing side.
Yeah. He was a mumbler.
And I'd say the same thing about Leonard Cohen. People go gaga over Leonard Cohen, who's a famous writer and poet, but he didn't really sing. He spoke his songs. I find myself drawn to them, but I find myself drawn to them in the way I'd find myself drawn to a train wreck or something, Like, it's something I can't tear away from because I'm trying to figure out how people can really like this so much.
Wow. Okay.
And there I am sitting listening to it myself, so what do I know? Yeah, that's odd.
What's his most famous song?
Probably Hallelujah.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking.
Yeah, and of course, it was made mostly famous by, Katie Lang.
Yeah.
What I'm trying to say. But a lot of other people did great things with his songs, but he did some of his own songs. I really like The Tower of Song.
I never heard that.
You should listen to The Tower of Song. It's different, but it's something you'd want to listen to when you're eating a smoked meat sandwich.
Okay.
From Montreal, because it's a Montreal.
Oh, okay.
It's I feel Montreal when I hear that song. So, yeah.
Would you rather be a world famous athlete or a world famous actor?
Ooh. I think I'd rather be. I'd be okay with either one, but if I had to be one, it'd be actor, because a world famous actor like Christopher Plummer, for instance, you can be doing that, and you're into your 80s.
Yeah, I agree.
A world famous athlete, you have that 10 or 15 year window of performance, and then you're done. So I'd say actor.
Yep, I agree. With
cool.
That.
Another question gets crossed off the list.
Would you rather continue to live in PEI or move back to Montreal if money wasn't an option or an issue? Sorry.
If money wasn't an issue, I could probably afford to visit Montreal whenever I wanted. But so money off the table. I think I would want to stay in PEI now.
You love it, eh?
I totally love it. If you'd asked me this 12 or 13 years ago before I moved here, I would. In fact, I even looked at apartments in Montreal just to see what they'd cost if I ever had enough money to afford one, so I could be up there a lot. There's so much to be said about every big city. Life is so much easier in so many ways. The ability to get yourself from place to place with public transit is incredible.
Yeah.
The subways and all that. And I could just picture myself living in a condo downtown in Montreal where I just go down into the underbelly of the city and walk on with my monthly pass and go anywhere I want.
Get some bagels.
Oh, man, that would be amazing. Yeah. There's a lot to be said for that. But overall, quality of life, the happiness I have with my life right now, I wouldn't change this.
What about New York City?
New York City would be even better. New York City would be incredible. It would be incredible. I'd like to live, I think, down in the financial district.
Near Battery Park?
Yeah. I think that's where I'd like to be. Battery Park City would be okay, but even Battery Park itself, just somewhere in the old part of town. There's good connections there. You're just across from Brooklyn. That would be my favorite place, but then again, I've seen some spots in Central Park West that I could be talked into.
I think Central Park would have to be my choice. Probably on the west side, maybe up near the museum.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, near the Dakota.
Near the Dakota and stuff.
Yeah, the Dakota's a fantastic property.
That stretch right along there is gorgeous. Is unbelievable.
Yeah.
Okay. Do you like licorice?
I like red licorice. I can tolerate grape licorice. Not a fan of black. Not a fan of back licorice. But I can, the licorice all sorts.
No.
It's little candies that are layered, like you get orange and black and then orange and white, like little candies.
Nope.
Okay. British listeners would probably know what I'm talking about, but it's licorice mixed in with regular chewy type candy.
Mm-hmm.
You'd know them if you saw them. Anyway, I can eat those quite easily. In fact, a little too easily. But black licorice, not my favorite.
You like Twizzlers?
Yes.
You like nibs?
Okay. Not as much, because part of the fun of Twizzlers is the chewing and the pulling and all that. Nibs are just the machine's already chewed it for you. So.
See, I like nibs, but I'm not a big fan of Twizzlers.
Really?
Yeah, I mean I'll eat them, but yeah. What's the favorite vehicle you have ever owned and why?
You
can't be on your phone during a podcast. Come on now.
I'm trying to show you a picture of licorice all sorts.
Oh. I thought you were talking to all your peeps.
No.
All your fans.
No. Now my phone, of course, it's made in 1947.
Yeah,
so.
you need, please.
Yeah.
You need a new phone. We need to start a GoFundMe for your new phone. Okay, yeah, I've seen those before.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Won't mean much to the viewers at home, but
looks like a bulk burn.
Yeah, like item. A bulk burn type item.
Is that a Canadian thing or is that?
I think it probably more began in Britain. I don't think it's much in the States, but.
No, I mean like bulk burn.
Oh, bulk burn. Oh, I don't know.
I'm sure they have. If they don't have bulk burn, they have something.
They'd have something
like it. And
like in Fredericton, they had a thing called Scoop and Save, which was similar to a bulk burn, I guess. Yeah. Back to your question.
Right.
Which was?
Come on, you weren't listening?
I was. I got distracted.
Yeah. What's the most favorite vehicle you've ever owned?
Oh, right. I think my first Camry.
That thing was a beast.
It was an incredible car.
1992 Camry.
In 1992, I put 407,000 kilometers on it, and that would be over 300,000 miles.
And there's nothing wrong with it when you...
Well, not quite over 3. It would be 250,000 miles, let's say. And there wasn't a thing wrong with it when they traded it in.
Original back brakes?
Original back brakes. Only one set of front brakes, I think. I had the original front struts.
Yeah.
Original exhaust, because almost all of the driving was hot engine, long-distance driving.
Yep.
And the only reason we get rid of it was because it wasn't big enough for your bigger, ever-growing hockey bag. Really, that was it.
Yeah, and I think we had a tent trailer at the time.
We had a tent trailer, which I was easily able to pull with the camera.
Right.
Yeah, and then we switched to that Caravan, which we also pulled the tent trailer
1998 Dodge Caravan with no shaded windows.
Yeah.
Like a van that you could just see through.
Yeah, it was great.
It was purple, too. And then we went to a 2001 Plymouth Grand Voyager, I think.
Yeah.
And then 1997 Chevy Tahoe.
Yeah.
That was probably my favorite vehicle that you guys owned.
Yeah. You really liked the Tahoe.
It was incredible.
And your mother loved it.
That's why I have a truck now.
I didn't feel like it contacted the road well enough for me. It's almost like it didn't have bald tires, but it felt like it had bald tires.
I'd live in it. That's how much I liked it. And then you had 2003 or 4, I think it was 3, Hyundai Santa Fe, which was a really great vehicle, but so unreliable in the last 5 years. It was deadly.
Yeah, it was. That's before Hyundai. That was made before Hyundai became the Hyundai that we know today, which is a much higher quality manufacturer, I think.
Yeah, maybe.
Yeah, I
That's a
haven't owned one
conversation
since.
for another time.
Yeah. But I know people who are very fond of their Hyundais that they've bought recently. So.
Oh, I've had a recent Hyundai, and I'm not very fond of it.
No, that's right.
I get rid of it.
But we didn't talk about the cars I had before.
Well,
the
that's
Camry.
what I'm going to get to after I get done this. So then you went to a 2010 Toyota Camry, which was nice.
Yeah.
And then you went to a 2014 Toyota Corolla.
Corolla, which we still have.
You still have.
And I love it.
You love it. I hate it.
That's fine.
So going back to not what your parents had or anything like that. So after high school, your first car would have been the Lada, would it?
No, after high school, my first car.
The creepy van?
No, it was a 1973 Chevy Vega station wagon.
Oh, dang!
It was.
You had a station wagon?
I had a little station wagon.
Was it did it have wood paneling on the side?
Yeah.
Was it a Roadmaster?
It wasn't big like that, but it had like MacTac sticky.
That's
stuff.
amazing. That's amazing.
And it was blue with the wood paneling.
That's incredible. Do you have pictures of it?
Probably somewhere.
Amazing.
Yeah, it was fantastic. It was an aluminum block engine, which was a bit experimental at the time.
Mm-hmm.
The oil pan sat so low to the ground in the front that every time you hit a bump and you bottomed out, you wrecked your oil pan. And it was made of aluminum, so you couldn't weld it. So it was just it was an awful thing to look after. Certainly, it was, and the low coolant light was always going. And,
I'm assuming the aluminum was a weight decision.
Yeah, weight and efficiency and all that. It got me from place to place, but it was.
So after that,
I had a 1975 Chevy Biscayne, which was a big four-door big car.
I'm not familiar with that.
Yeah, you wouldn't have certainly remembered it. It was gone before you showed up.
Yeah.
And I traded it in on a 1980 Lada.
Oh yeah,
You remember the Lada?
The orange Beast.
Yeah. And after the Lada, it died.
And you got an Oldsmobile?
Well, the Oldsmobile's coming.
Cadillac.
Well, the Cadillac was kind of a second vehicle. When my grandfather passed away in 1990, he left me his Cadillac, a big old 1973 Cadillac.
You started off and you smelled the fumes. And
yeah, it was huge. It had I think a 500 cc engine in it, or cubic inch engine. It was massive, and heavy, and very luxurious. But it was, when I got it, it was already 17 years old.
Yeah.
So it was getting on, and it was very expensive to fuel, very expensive to maintain. That Cadillac is on his headstone at the graveyard.
Right.
Yeah. But after the Biscayne and the Lada, I ended up with a Dodge K car.
Oh, you had a K car?
We had a K car. We had an Aries, a Plymouth Aries K car, maroon in color.
Epic.
And it went for I just had it for maybe a couple of years. Into the that was in the mid 80s, probably 85, 86, 87. And then when my dad passed away in 1988, I ended up with his Oldsmobile Delta 88. But prior to that, I had an Oldsmobile that, in fact, when your mother went into labor to have you, we drove her to the hospital in my previous Oldsmobile.
Is that the one with the powered seats?
Yep.
That's the only thing I remember from that car.
Yeah.
It had powered seats.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I guess that leads back up to
where
we started.
The first Camry. Yeah.
So that it's kind of a segue into the next question. What's your favorite vehicle that you've never owned?
Wow.
Because I know you like Jeep Wranglers. You like the idea of a Jeep Wrangler. I don't think you'd after you drove one. I don't think you'd ever buy one.
I don't think I'd like one. For various reasons, I've been.
Do I have ink on my face?
Not that I can see.
Okay, good. This pen is leaking.
If you do, it's beige. I really like the Subaru Crosstrek.
Yeah, we've been looking at that recently. Yeah.
I really like the FJ Cruiser that Toyota used to make.
Yeah, I like that a lot too, actually.
I really like that. And I like a Hummer.
You like a Hummer?
Yeah. No, not necessarily the full-size military version, but I think they made a slightly smaller street.
No, they don't make the military version for consumer purchase anymore.
No, okay. I like that idea, mainly because I could mount a lot of radios in it. That's really But as far as going on a trip, like having a vehicle that I'd like to take on a road trip and it would do my thing, probably a cross track or something like that would be great.
No, like fancy sports cars or
No.
Ferrari or Italia.
No.
Nothing?
Although there was two fabulous looking vehicles at the home show yesterday. They were made by a snowmobile company. I don't know if it's Polaris or who it is.
Oh, I know what you're talking about.
The Slingshot.
Yeah.
That was
3 wheels.
Yeah.
Yeah.
2 in the front, 1 in the back.
Yeah.
But you sit in it like a car.
Yeah, it's cool. It's really cool.
The black one was $36,000 and the red one was $32,000.
It's not a vehicle; it's a toy.
It's a total toy.
Yeah.
You wouldn't even use it to get your groceries.
No. It's less efficient than a bike.
But no sports car for me. I think overall, if I had like a 300 series BMW, I'd be happy with that.
Yeah, you like BMWs.
Yeah, but just a very nondescript one, like a 300 series from a distance, a 325i. It looks like a Honda Civic. I don't want to be flashy, so that's me.
Have you ever been in a car accident or a near miss?
Yes, I've been in a car accident and I've been in a near miss. The car accident, I was the right side passenger in the back seat in Millerton, New Brunswick. On the way up, I was in high school, grade 12. We were coming up from a curling bonspiel in Newcastle. I was just there to watch.
Wait, what did you say? Bonspiel?
Bonspiel.
What the hell is that?
It's a curling tournament.
That's what they call it? Or is that just like a shindig?
No, it's a curling word, bonspiel.
Okay.
Now, I don't know what it means. It's obviously Nordic, I guess. But it's a bonspiel. And we were coming back on a Saturday afternoon, and the car that we were in was driven by the mother of one of the girls on the curling team. And my then girlfriend was beside me in the middle of the back seat, and her cousin, I guess, was beside her. And as we came around a corner, Mrs. Weaver, who was driving the car, lost control, and the car, with my side of the car, turned sideways onto incoming traffic, and we get T-boned.
Whoa.
Yeah. The gal in the front broke her hip. Wasn't a scratch on me.
Really?
Yeah. I grabbed my girlfriend and kind of tried to shield her.
What a legend.
I'm tremendous. I didn't get the Order of Canada. I'm very disappointed.
Yeah.
But there wasn't, and just by a few inches farther, into the oncoming lane or not would have changed history there for me. But she broke her hip, made a full recovery. So the impact was pretty substantial. Yeah.
And a near miss?
Near miss, Fredericton, 1982. I was in my Lada, I think it was, and I was at a stop sign. I was about 4 cars back in a stop sign, and there was icy roads again. The car ahead of me had gone ahead because the stop sign people were leaving, and there was a gap in front of me. Just as someone was turning into the same intersection from my left, they got hit an icy patch, and they scooted straight across the intersection into where I would have been if I'd followed the car ahead of me. But I was a little bit late getting going. It was a standard shift, and I probably wasn't paying full attention. And I thought he was going to hit the front of my car. He went straight across in front of me and hit the guardrail and bounced off it. And I tensed up, waiting for the impact so much that I had to go to the doctor and get muscle relaxants for my back. My back was basically seized for like 2 weeks.
Wow.
I was in terrible shape. From my neck right down to the tailbone, shall we say. I was just like frozen up.
Interesting.
Terrible. And I didn't hit my car. So that was weird because, not that I would have put in an insurance claim, that isn't me, but where'd you get hit, sir? Well, actually, I didn't. Yeah, my mind did it.
Yeah.
I've had a few other accidents, I'm sure, just little benders here and there, but that was it.
I've never been in an accident.
Good for you. Keep it that way.
I have a perfect driving record. However, I did have a near miss once, and there's 2 ramps when you come on to the bridge in Fredericton, going to the north side. One of them, you continue in your own lane, and the other one, you have to merge on. I was in the one where you had to merge on, which eventually meets the other one that has their own lane, but I thought I was in the other one, and I went to go pass. So I actually crossed like the yellow line. It was like raining and stuff. I couldn't see it. Into oncoming traffic in the middle of rush hour on a Saturday. And by the time I get out, there was a car like 3 car lengths up that I saw. And so I was able to jerk back in. But if I had made that decision a half a second after I did it, I would have head-on collision. was probably the most scary moment of my life. And there's 3 people with me in the vehicle.
Wow.
I've never even come close to an accident other than that. It was just I don't know, like, I thought I was in the other, I thought I came up the other ramp. We were talking in the vehicle or something like that. Just got distracted.
Sure. Shows you how fast that can happen.
Yeah. It's crazy.
Wow.
How were you in school growing up, and what did you study in university?
Wow, interesting. I was quite good in school. I wasn't at the top of the class by any stretch, but I was quite good. I was usually, maybe in the class of 30, I was probably 4th or 5th in line when it came to marks, likely every year. So I did well. My favorite subject would have to be history. I really liked history a lot. We didn't have geography as a separate subject, but that would have been my favorite if we'd had a separate geography class.
What do you think my favorite subject was?
Social studies?
Nah, lunch. Lunch was always my favorite.
In university, I did a double major in political science and economics. So, yeah.
I have some more questions here for you. Sorry, I guess I'll answer the last of that. I took graphic design and photography in...
Oh, right. That's for you, too.
Post-secondary education. I have more questions here, but we're over an hour, so I'm going to leave these for next time.
No.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I'll leave these for next time.
Alrighty.
And so, guys, thank you very much for listening or watching. Please leave your questions for the next Havin'A Yak podcast in the comment section below on the YouTube video on More Post to Post here.
And we'll be doing that in 2 weeks' time.
In 2 weeks' time, yeah. So I'll go through all the comments and write down your questions. And I have 6 questions that I didn't get to answer this time.
Anything I need to do research on first?
No.
Okay.
I don't think so.
And we'll be in these same seats next week talking hockey.
Exactly. Yeah, we'll be back
podcast.
Talking lots of hockey. I really think the biweekly change is a positive thing hockey-wise, just because we're running out of stuff to talk about. Like this, yesterday we filmed a lot of videos for Post to Post. We talked a lot of hockey. If we had to film a podcast today for an hour, I wouldn't have anything to talk about. But really, there's not much to talk about. So I really think the accumulation of news over 2 weeks to talk about in the podcast is
it's not that there's not a lot going on in the hockey world, but there's not a lot going on that we haven't already covered in some other way.
If we were just doing the hockey podcast, that was the only thing I did, totally.
Yeah.
But when I'm making 10 videos a week and talking about other stuff, it gets a little dry. So, so thanks guys for watching on YouTube. If you could like this video, hit the like button below. That'd be awesome. Leave a comment. Tell me what you thought of it, positively or negatively. Please subscribe if you're new. We're trying to grow this channel as well. If you're listening on iTunes or Google Play or anything like that, and you don't do the whole visual thing, that's totally fine too. I think that's how probably most people, even the people who watch in quotations on YouTube, aren't really watching. They're probably just listening and doing other stuff maybe.
Yeah, they just minimize it while they go back to solitaire or whatever they're doing.
Solitaire. Yeah, get some free selling. So anyways, I appreciate you guys. Love you guys. Thanks for all the support. And
thanks for your questions. It's a lot of fun.
Yes, thanks for your questions.
Real stumpers.
Yeah, definitely. So keep them coming. They can be softball questions, or they can be deep, crazy life advice questions. Whatever you got, hit us with it.
Remember, nothing I say is official.
And I don't want to say there's no boundaries, but there's obviously boundaries. Don't be too vulgar. But yeah. Anyways, thanks guys, appreciate it, and we'll see you next week so we can talk some hockey. Adios.